Guatemala President-elect Arevalo denounced an ongoing coup d'etat to break constitutional order. In Brazil, an explosion at a metal factory killed 2 people and seriously injured at least 12 others. And in Niger, thousands take to the streets to demand the withdrawal of French troops from the country. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Guatemala's President-elect Bernardo Arevalo denounced on Friday that a coup d'etat is underway to break the constitutional order in reference to the actions against his party, Semilla. At a press conference, the sociologist also stated that despite the votes in his favor in the August 20th elections, a plan has been implemented to break the constitutional order and violate democracy. Arevalo called on the people of Guatemala, civil society, businessmen, workers, the popular movement, churches, indigenous authorities, students, among other social sectors, to unite in defense of democracy and unrestricted respect for the will of the people.
There is a group of corrupt politicians and officials who refuse to accept this result and have implemented a plan to break the constitutional order and violate democracy. These actions constitute a coup d'etat that is being promoted by the institutions that should guarantee justice in our country, headed by the Attorney General Consuelo Porras, by the prosecutor Rafael Curuchiche, and the 7th Judge of Penal Instance Freddy Orellana, as well as the Board of Directors of the Congress of the Republic and other corrupt and anti-democratic actors.
On Friday, an explosion at a metal factory in southern Brazil killed 2 people and seriously injured at least 12 others. Dozens of firefighters and rescue teams were sent to the site of the explosion in the countryside city of Acabreuba, about 90 kilometers northwest of the city of Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo Governor Tarcísio de Freitas noted that the injured were transferred to regional hospitals, 10 of whom were in a serious condition. The powerful explosion occurred at 11 a.m. local time and completely destroyed the factory. Local media outlets said the blast was triggered by overheating equipment. An official investigation is currently underway by the authorities.
The company already had authorizations. The company was working relatively within the technical standards, but the question of the details of the standards and whether they comply with all of them will be discussed in the investigation.
I was on my balcony when I heard the explosion. I even thought it was street gas that had exploded. But then I saw the smoke from this factory and I didn't have the courage to come and see it. I have several friends who work there.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, presented his 5th government report under the slogan "For the good of all, first the poor," from the state of Campeche. In his speech, López Obrador emphasized that Mexico is the 3rd country in the world with the lowest level of unemployment, highlighting the benefits of the labor reform. The head of state mentioned that the national budget has been enough to grant economic support to 2 million small agricultural producers and 200,000 fishermen. The president emphasized that in 2023, his administration reached a record production of a little more than 300 million tons of food, which guarantees national food self-sufficiency. This is the first time a president has
In the almost 5 years of my government, it has been demonstrated that our development model, known as Mexican humanism, summarized in the phrase that for the well-being of all, the poor first, is effective and works exceptionally well. In this 5th report, I present facts that prove it. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the failed neoliberal or neo-porfirist model is that the commitment to material progress without justice is politically and socially unfeasible, and that in the long run, it is doomed to failure.
In Ecuador, the Public Prosecutor's Office opened criminal proceedings against 6 people allegedly involved in the car bombing in Quito. The judicial body reported that the 6 suspects were put in preventive custody. The defendants will be detained for 30 days while the judicial process continues, in which sentences of 10 to 23 years of imprisonment may be imposed. The authorities will take the time of the trial to continue the thorough investigations of the criminal attack. In the Caribbean, the word canuco comes from the indigenous languages and names a small parcel of agricultural land. In this occasion, we bring you the story of Las Conuqueras, a group of women in the Venezuelan state of Carabobo that found in communal agriculture the solutions to their families' hardships, sometimes with their bare hands. Today, they feed, nurture, and give a purpose to their community through self-sustained agriculture with governmental assistance. They are the protagonists of this new episode of the series Venezuela on the Move, a production of our colleagues Adriana Sivori and Jesus Romero.
Not even the burning sun or the difficulties that may arise can stop their work. They are known as Conuqueras women and they are farmers.
I have been working here for 10 years for this community. Apart from that, I also study and work. Within the same agricultural zone, there are people like women who are seamstresses, housewives, who do other activities. We organize ourselves either in the morning or in the afternoon to have the possibility of doing all the activities.
Dulby takes care of some of the plots of land in the morning shift. Her son and her daughter-in-law live with her and sometimes help her in the fields.
I teach mathematics in a high school, a public high school. We are people with an enormous treasure, but more than that, of producing, of creating, of doing different things. There is something that we should always keep in mind, which is community, and we should never lose that.
Everything they grow is for their families and the community itself. To this day, they have produced 40,000 kilograms of food, cereals, fruits, and vegetables.
At first it was hard because we started with our hands, with just our hands. We started using spades and machetes to plant. Then we started to work with institutions. We contacted them and they came and they saw that what we were doing was a reality.
Now they receive training, they have instruments and they have been able to build a deep water well for irrigation. And the government has also given land titles to these organized women. In this town, Conuqueras women serve and distribute the food house by house to more than 13,000 people.
Adriana Sivori y Jesús Romero, teleSUR Carabobo, Venezuela.
You can find more episodes of our series Venezuela on the Move in YouTube and other platforms. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us also on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Those stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. This September 1st marks 1 year since the assassination attempt of Argentine Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. Let us recall the main events regarding the case and their relevance to the current Argentine context.
On the night of September the 1st, 2022, an image troubled the world. A man made his way through a crowd and pointed his gun at the head of the Vice President of Argentina, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. This was an attempt to assassinate the most influential popular leader of the country, meters away from her house and in front of the television cameras. However, the bullet did not go off. The attacker, Fernando Sabac Montiel, his girlfriend, Brenda Uliarte, and self-proclaimed leader of this group, Gabriel Carrizo, were detained for the crime. However, social organizations demand the investigation look into the evident link between this group and far-right organizations and leading opposition figures in order to find all of those responsible. Such is the case of Revolución Federal, a far-right group which throughout the year 2022 carried out violent demonstrations against social leaders and especially against the vice president. This group, with proven links to the attackers, received millionaire payments from a company linked to Mauricio Macri's former finance minister. Furthermore, its leaders, Jonathan Morel and Leonardo Sosa, have shown themselves close to the political party of current presidential candidate Javier Milei. Investigations also point to Gerardo Milman, deputy of Juntos por el Cambio and right-hand man of current presidential candidate Patricia Bullrich, who was heard talking to his secretaries about the attack days before it took place. One of his assistants declared sometime later that the cleaning of their cell phones was carried out in the offices of the institute of the current candidate. One day after the assassination attempt, thousands of Argentines took to the streets in defense of democracy. Personalities from all the political spectrum spoke out in solidarity with Cristina Fernández de Kirchner and categorically denounced the assassination attempt. However, neither Patricia Bullrich nor Javier Milei condemned the act. 1 year later, and just weeks before a new presidential election in which hate speeches and violence proliferate, Argentines still demand justice and the clarification of an act which has opened a wound in the country's democracy that remains unhealed.
Spanish police seized at least 3 tons of cocaine on a yacht near the Canary Islands and arrested 6 suspects allegedly involved in a Balkan-based trafficking ring, Europol said on Friday. According to Europol, Spanish police in dinghies and accompanied by a warship intercepted the sailboat west of Gran Canaria, which was carrying some 2.7 tons of cocaine hidden in sports bags, while the suspects were arrested at several locations in a Serbian-led operation. In January last year, police in Belgrade launched an investigation into the cartel suspecting large-scale cocaine trafficking across the Atlantic Ocean. Police also seized 2 expensive vehicles, luxury watches, and more than 550,000 euros in cash. Bosnian Serbs gathered on the outskirts of Sarajevo to protest prosecutors' charges against President Milorad Dodik over 2 controversial laws he passed. Demonstrators briefly blocked the traffic at key points between the country's 2 semi-autonomous entities on Friday, brandishing portraits of Dodik, the effigy of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Serb and Russian flags. Simultaneous protests took place in the Bosnian capital Sarajevo and the regions of Tuzla, Doboj, and Nevesinje. Dodik, a Kremlin ally, signed into law last July a legislation that would allow the Bosnian Serb entity to bypass or ignore decisions made by the top international envoy to Bosnia. The U.S. government claims the law undermines the peace deal signed in Dayton, Ohio, which ended Bosnia's 1992-1995 war. The charge against the president was announced by the prosecutor's office on August 11th, but it has not yet been ratified by the country's top court. On Friday, the Belarusian border service stated that a Polish military helicopter violated the state border. On Telegram, the border service said a Polish Mi-24 military helicopter crossed the state border at an extremely low altitude, entered a total of 1,200 meters into the territory of Belarus, and then turned back. In addition, the Belarusian Foreign Ministry stated that it had summoned the Polish charged affairs following the state border violation incident. The ministry added that Poland must provide an explanation of the incident and conduct an investigation. Tensions on the Belarus-Poland border have been rising since the beginning of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine and had a particular upsurge after Russia deployed tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that it had captured several strategic heights near Kupiansk, an eastern Ukrainian city where Moscow increased pressure in August.
In the Kupiansk direction, the tactical position of the Western troop units was improved by taking over enemy strongholds and key heights. By skillful use of means of destruction, significant damage was inflicted on the Ukrainian armed forces units. The enemy's losses during the week amounted to 470 Ukrainian servicemen, 22 armored combat vehicles, 21 vehicles, and 18 field artillery pieces. The command of the formations of the Ukrainian armed forces purposefully throws personnel into meat grinder assaults without cover to overcome mine and explosive barriers of our forces on foot.
Greek firefighters battled flames in forested areas in the country's northeastern region on Friday as a massive wildfire continued to burn. The blaze, burning for the 14th day, has already been blamed for the death of 20 people whose bodies were found last week. On the other hand, firefighters rescued a group of 35 migrants trapped in a forest area as flames approached. The fire department said the group became trapped in the forest between the two villages in the Evros region near the border with Turkey. No injuries were reported and there was no immediate information on their nationalities. However, all are believed to have been migrants who had recently crossed the border. To date, thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes in villages and towns in northeastern Greece due to the fire, although the vast majority have since been allowed back. Tens of millions of people in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and other southern Chinese megacities sheltered indoors Friday as Super Typhoon Saola threatened to become the strongest storm to hit the region in decades. China's National Weather Office had predicted Saola may become the strongest typhoon to make landfall in the Pearl River Delta since 1949, referring to a low-lying region that includes Hong Kong, Macau, and Guangdong province. With a direct hit possible, authorities in Hong Kong raised the warning level on Friday evening, the city's highest, 1010, which had only been issued 16 times since World War II. Hundreds of flights were cancelled across the region. The start of the school year was delayed in Hong Kong, and the rain-drenched finance hub street were deserted. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Thousands take to the streets of the Nigerian capital Niamey to demand the removal of French troops from the country. Niger has braced for a weekend of planned anti-French rallies as tensions mount between the West African country's new military rulers and its traditional European ally. A coalition of civil society groups opposed to the presence of French forces in Niger has called a three-day sit-in starting Friday. The protest, organized by the M62 grouping, is set to take place in central Niamey to demand the departure of the French contingent. France has around 1,500 troops in Niger, many of them stationed at an air base near the capital, deployed to allegedly help fight insurgent groups.
Our only request, our ultimate request is the departure of the French who are on Niger territory. We don't need these people here. We don't need, and we repeat, we are ready to die to defend our homeland. We are ready to die to get them out. They must leave. We don't need them here.
In this context, Niger's new military rulers on Friday accused France of further blatant interference after President Emmanuel Macron reiterated his support for ousted leader Mohamed Bazoum.
The government of the Republic of Niger has followed with dismay the remarks made by the President of the French Republic on Monday, August 28, 2023, during his address to the French ambassador. These remarks constitute a further blatant interference in Niger's internal affairs.
In South Africa, 16 men and 2 women suspected of being part of a gang that robbed armored vans were killed on Friday in a shootout with the police in a rural northern region. According to local police, the officers approached a building where the gang was operating and the suspects opened fire. 18 suspects were killed and 1 police officer reportedly wounded in the shooting. 4 other suspects were arrested at a separate location. The gang was suspected of robbing armored vans used for carrying cash from banks and had been under surveillance for days. Police spokesperson Brigadier Atlanta Mathe said in a statement that 7 automatic rifles and 10 vehicles, including high-performance sports cars, were seized. Cash in transit heists are a common and often violent crime in South Africa, and the criminals who pull them off are usually heavily armed. On Friday, Iran's foreign minister rejected accusations from France over Tehran's interference in Lebanon, urging President Emmanuel Macron to focus on his own country. During a visit to Beirut, Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian advised President Macron to focus on the situation in France instead of paying attention to other countries. Macron had told a conference of French ambassadors earlier this week that a key element to solve Lebanon's political crisis was the clarification of regional interference, including that of Iran. Plunged into a severe economic crisis since 2019, Lebanon has been governed by a caretaker cabinet for more than a year and without a president since late October. Lebanese lawmakers failed 12 times to elect a successor to former President Michel Aoun.
I advise Mr. Macron to focus on the situation inside France instead of paying attention to questions of interference in other countries. In fact, Iran has always played the most constructive role in helping and supporting Lebanon.
On Friday, Singapore's former Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam was elected president, earning a landslide victory in the city-state's first contested vote for the largely ceremonial position in more than a decade. Singaporeans headed to the polls that were closely watched as an indication of support for the ruling party after a red spat of scandals, but the long-time stalwart of the party won more than two-thirds of the votes over two rivals. With 70.4% of the vote, Shanmugaratnam won a 6-year term against 15.7% of his main rival, Ngoc Son, a former chief investment officer of Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund, GIC, which manages the country's foreign reserves.
I believe that the vote for me and what I stand for is a vote of confidence in Singapore. I pledge, and it will be my duty, to use the roles and responsibilities of the President to advance this future of optimism and solidarity among Singaporeans. I'm humbled by this vote. It is not just a vote for me, it is a vote for Singapore's future, a future of optimism and solidarity. That's what it really is.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.